Hello everybody, welcome back to another Stacey West preview pod. My name is Jake. We're here for the preview of the Rochdale game on Saturday. And fortunately, we've been joined by Dean again. Dean, how are you, mate?
Yeah, not too bad, mate, apart from Dale's, collapse in form and off the pitch and everything. Other than that, I'm fine, thanks.
How are you coping with the lockdown? And, there's positive news that you might be able to get back to Scotland, for next season. That must be at least, clouding the grey skies at the minute.
Yeah, hopefully, we'll be in a slightly better position as a club by that point, because I think at the minute, if we were at the game, it'd be pretty toxic, to be honest, because things aren't going too well. But yeah, hopefully by the time next season comes around, we'll be in a slightly better place, whether that's in League One or League Two, and we'll be looking forward to it again. At the minute, I'm glad we're not going. But I'm obviously desperate to get out of lockdown still.
I was scrolling through your Twitter this week and I saw about your fans forum. It was quite eventful. You told me off air. Could you just enlighten our viewers about what on earth happened? Because it seemed like an absolute car crash. Yeah,
I think car crash is a fair description. So we had the CEO was crying on air after questions about the manager's future. The manager whose contract we all thought was up this summer. Obviously, none of us expected it to be renewed given the position we're in the league. But we kind of found out that he'd been given a year's extension by the fact that a question was asked about it, and one of the directors turned to Brian Barry Murphy and asked, "When does your contract actually end?" So that's the level of disorganisation and lack of communication at the club at the minute. And that they were just two examples of plenty, to be honest. But there were some not positives, but I think some fans will have learned a little bit about the club as well, regarding our finances, basically, and putting into context the fact that we were always going to struggle to compete this season. So perhaps some fans will be a little bit more forgiving of what's happening on the pitch, but I think what's happening off the pitch is now what's really worrying most of the supporters.
I think struggling to compete would probably be a good phrase to put Rochdale out at the minute. Sat rock bottom of League One. Are you getting seriously concerned about returning back into the fourth tier, or do you still think there's enough in your team to pull you out of the bottom four?
If I'm honest, Jake, about 3 or 4 weeks ago was when I kind of gave up, and that was before we'd even slipped into the bottom four. I was saying the other day, I don't know what the word is, but like the complete lack of momentum. It's the opposite of momentum. It's like we're just spiralling out of control at the minute. 1 win in 17, 1 win in 21 at home this season in all competitions. No goals in 7 games. There just doesn't seem to be any way that we can turn this around, regardless of what the manager seems to think. We're hoping to get a few players back from injury, which might change things. But the players we have missing are important, but are they quality enough to turn us from this team that are just getting battered by everyone into a team that can pick up enough points to stay in the league? I don't think so.
It all sort of went wrong in the summer, didn't it? When you let Ian Henderson go, he was obviously was one of the top goal scorers in the third tier in the last 20 years or so. And, you've clearly not been able to replicate his goals. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, I think there's been spells when we've been okay going forward and poor at the back. And now it seems to be the other way around, where we just can't score. Matt Lunn's our top scorer. He's been injured for a few weeks now. Jake Beasley's kind of he's not scored many goals, but when he's played, he's kind of been the fulcrum for the likes of London, Humphreys to play off. He's been injured as well. We brought Jack Vale in on loan from Blackburn. He's been injured. So I think if we'd have had all of the options that we have up front available, we might have been a little bit better going forward. But we've definitely missed Henderson in terms of just that reliability of goal scoring. Stephen Humphreys has scored quite a few when he's been fit and firing, and when the team have been in better form. But I think the thing with Henderson was that he was always capable of scoring goals, even when we were out of form. He always seemed to pop up in the right place at the right time, whereas we don't seem to have a player like that at the moment. Hopefully Humphreys will develop into that, but he's had a couple of big chances in the last 2 games when the game's still been open and missed them both, which is worrying for his confidence and for our confidence as a team as a whole, to be honest.
And you touched there about the entertainment. Rochdale were branded the most entertaining team in League One for a couple of weeks. You beat Wigan 5-0. Did you draw with Charlton 4 each or something like that as well?
Yeah.
You were 4-2 up in that game, from what I can remember.
Yeah, 4-2 at half time.
Where's that side gone? The side that were putting 4 or 5 past teams. What's going on? How come you can't find the net anymore?
Well, I think the issue was that we were always conceding as well during that run, so we had to try and shore things up a little bit. During that run, we didn't have many defenders available, so that's why we were conceding so many goals, I guess, and kind of focusing on the attack. And now it's the other way around. All our defence is fit, but we're struggling for attacking options. Like I say, Lund, Beasley, Vale, Rathbone has been out suspended. He'll be back this weekend. Who's kind of like one of the driving forces from midfield. So I think that's part of the reason. But yeah, I think obviously aside from the injuries, we tried to shore things up a little bit more defensively because we were conceding so many goals. There was a game during that run when there were so many high scoring matches. We lost 4-3 to Oxford and conceded just an abysmal last minute goal through trying to overplay it at the back. And there was a game before that where we were leading going into injury time at Gillingham and they scored in the last minute from a set piece. So we had to try and shore things up defensively, but at the expense of creating chances. And with so few attacking players available, it's just kind of been a perfect storm in terms of not being able to get on the score sheet.
Barry Murphy then is there's obviously a lot of controversy around him at the minute. He was a young upcoming manager. When we came to Scotland earlier in the season, there was a good reputation of playing football the right way. Has that sort of cost him, and potentially might that cost him his job if you go down, or do you think the club will stick with him if you get relegated?
Well, I think now that we know that he's got another year's contract, I think he'll have to stay because I don't think we'll have the money to end that contract, to be honest. So I think we've kind of backed ourselves into a corner. When that contract was signed, nobody knows. So if it had been signed in maybe November, December, I think most fans would have been understanding of the fact that he was doing an okay job in the circumstances. But now, given the fact that it's been so long without a win, the fact that we haven't won at home since, I think it is the 3rd of October when we got that one home win we've had all season. It's really hard to justify the fact that he's still in the job, even with the injuries for me. There's a lot of fans that still think, he tries to play football the right way and he has a good reputation for developing young players, which is going to be key to our sort of business model in terms of developing and selling players on for profit. But it's coming at the expense of getting results on the pitch now. And for me, that's just, we're becoming a club that place more importance on developing and selling players than we do on winning matches. And that's really difficult to accept as a fan because you just start to wonder, like, what am I doing? Why am I might as well go and watch an academy team, what I mean, rather than a team trying to win games, because that's not what we are at the moment. I feel a bit for Barry Murphy, given the circumstances, given the injuries, given the finances, but it's still not acceptable. The players that we have can be doing better than this. They could have definitely done better than this. There's been so many games that we've just given the opposition easy goals through his style of play and through his sort of lack of organisation and set pieces and stuff. So it's really difficult. I think the club are in a situation where any manager is bound to struggle, but I do think someone else could have done a slightly better job with what he has available.
And obviously that will probably come to fruition because you've stayed up comfortably most years you've been in League One. I can only seem to remember you being saved on the final day once or twice, maybe, out of all the time you've been up here. But in terms of BBN, then, is he sort of, if you get relegated this year, do you think the club will back him, and do you think he can bring you back into League One, or do you think you'll probably start languishing in League Two?
I think the club will stick with him because of that reputation that he has for developing players and for playing a style of play that can attract players, which is something they spoke about a lot of the fans for, and the fact that we've managed to get some loan players from Premier League sides, and we've managed to pick up some young players that were unattached because they wanted to come because they knew they could develop and play in a certain way at Dale. Perhaps not getting the results that you might want, but maybe furthering their own sort of career potential by coming to us. So I think that's why he'll stay. In terms of how we would do if we were to drop down into League Two, it's really hard to say because there's quality in that squad. And if we can keep hold of players like Matt London, Owen O'Connell, who are out of contract, I think we'd have a really, really good squad in League Two. The issue is we've never seen Brian have a team that's been fighting up towards the top of the league. We've always sort of been just above the relegation zone since he's been in charge. So I don't know how that would work out. And also, obviously, as I said before, we have that kind of opposite of momentum at the minute where we've lost so many games. It's kind of hard to break that losing mentality, I suppose. So I would be kind of excited to see what could happen because I feel like there's always been potential with Brian there. There's always been that one maybe 2 or 3 month spell where everyone's fit and everyone's firing and something really special could happen, which maybe is more likely to happen in the league below as well. So maybe something could happen, but it'd be a risk, but I suppose it'd be a risk to replace him as well.
Let's just revisit the game that took place earlier on in the season. Then, Rochdale 0, Lincoln City 2, just to cheer myself up a little bit for the main part. But I thought Rochdale looked quite good that day. Obviously, we've spoke about the fact that you tried to play proper football. You had quite a few opportunities before we opened the scoring, and I seem to think that we sort of got away with one after winning away 2-0. It sort of flattered us a bit more than what it did. Would that be something that you'd agree with?
I'll be honest, I remember seeing you say something similar at the time and a few other Lincoln fans on social media and being surprised because I thought you were excellent. I thought you controlled the game for the majority of it. I thought once you scored, we weren't in the game after that. You just sort of phased us out of it. I thought you looked like a promotion winning side, if I'm honest. I've said at the start of the season that I always expected us to struggle, but there were going to be games where you felt that if we gave our best and lost, then you'd be okay with it. And I felt like Lincoln was an example of that. We put in a decent performance, but we just didn't have the same quality and the same sort of strength that you guys had, which I think there's been a few of them. Sunderland last week was one. Both the games against Hull, I would say, are the same. Obviously, the issues have come in the games where we could have done better, where we've just crumbled against teams that we can compete with. But I thought Lincoln was an example of a team that were just far better than us. And even though we put in a decent performance, like you say, I don't think there was ever. It was going to be one of those games where we needed everything to land our way to get 3 points. It didn't on the day, but I was really impressed with Lincoln, and I'm really worried about playing them again this weekend.
I think it would be fair to say that you wouldn't expect to get points against those teams that were at the top of the table. You sort of judge yourself more against the likes of Wigan's and Northamptons and Swindons, etc. But you had some good performances out there. I seem to remember there was Ollie Rathbone seemed to play well before he went off injured. There was a centre half I quite like the look of. I can't remember his name. He had big fuzzy hair.
Aidan Roberts.
That's he seemed he played. He tried to play football the right way. And obviously, you had Sanchez last season, didn't you? That's now playing for Brighton every week. So, as I said, you're not really going to be thinking that you can get the points against Lincoln. But this weekend, are you looking to? Do you think take a point? Do you think a point would be a good result for Rochdale?
Oh, it'd be an incredible result, to be honest. The way we're playing at the minute, the way we're going into games is just expecting to get beat. As fans at the minute, we're expecting to get beat comfortably. And even though we've put in some decent performances recently, we've still got beat 2-0. We played really well against Sunderland away. Probably our best performance in the last few months, but we were 2-0 down after 30 minutes, so it was irrelevant. And I can see the same probably happening again this weekend. I'd take a point, absolutely. I'd take a point. I'd take any points we can get at this stage because not only do we need them for the fight, but we need them to just stop the rot of losing games. And I feel like a point away at Lincoln will be a real positive to sort of take forward. We've tried to change things up a little bit in the last few games as well. On Tuesday night, we had we switched back to a back 5/back 3 with the wing backs, and it seemed to help us a little bit in terms of moving the ball forward because we had those options out wide that Morley could choose from the wing backs. And I hope that's stuck with, because it did seem to be a little bit more progressive. And if you can throw Ollie Rathbone in there, who you mentioned there, back from suspension, maybe it'll give us a little bit more dynamism in midfield. But I would 100% take a point now, mate, definitely.
And do you think Rochdale are going to come and sit back? Because I think they'll be able to get confidence in the fact that the teams like Shrewsbury and Bristol Rovers have come to Sincil Bank and sat 10 men behind the ball and, got one opportunity to win the game, and they've done it. Can Rochdale sort of take confidence from our sort of patchy home form?
Yeah, you would hope so. I don't know whether that'll be the plan to sort of replicate what Shrewsbury did in terms of sitting deep and trying to find that one goal on the counter-attack, just because I don't think it's really in our nature to sit too deep. I think that's kind of why we've switched to the 5 at the back, is just because obviously naturally then you're going to have more players behind the ball.
Yeah.
So you don't have to necessarily change your philosophy of the way you want to play, but just naturally you are going to be slightly more defensive. I don't think we'll sit back and try and frustrate. We always try and get possession of the ball as much as we can. And we always try and bring the ball out from the back and put the other team under pressure. So I think we will try and do that, and hopefully try and create a few chances, as we've managed to against Sunderland and against Hull and Shrewsbury. But obviously it's a matter of taking them. And if you don't take them and concede silly goals, which we constantly do, then you put yourselves under pressure.
Well, hopefully that sort of plays into our hands. And how, in terms of a score prediction, how can you see the game going on a Saturday afternoon?
Well, we've lost our last 4 games 2-0, and we lost to you 2-0 at home, didn't we? So
yeah,
I can't look beyond a 2-0 Lincoln win, to be honest with you, Jake.
Stick a 5 on it, lads. Stick a 5 on it.
Well, I had a 5 on Monsma to score against us after you bigged him up last time we spoke.
Well, if I was to tell you someone to put money on to score this weekend, it'd be Morgan Rogers. He scored in his last 3 or something like that. From Manchester City, you might well be aware of him, but the kid's talented. There's no way he'll be a player at this division. Anyway, Dean, we'll digress. But thank you very much for coming on, Dean. How can Lincoln City supporters find your work?
Yeah, it's at rochdaleafc.com on Twitter, or www.rochdaleafc.com. You'll find some interesting, in-depth dives into our recent poor performances and struggles off the pitch there as well. So cheers for having me though, Jake. Really enjoyed that.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next week.